Welcome to a special edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast with me, Phil Morse. Digital DJ Tips is 15 years old. We've been teaching DJing for 15 years. So we thought that we would record a few special podcast editions where we talk to people who've been here for the whole of this journey. And one of those is Laidback Luke, our tutor, but more importantly, a DJ who's been right at the top of his game for the last 30 years, never mind 15 years. I did a fascinating interview with Luke earlier on when we talked about mental health, DJing, music, crowds, how the scene has changed, how what you need to do to succeed as a DJ has changed, and where this is all going. He shared some fascinating insights. So without further ado, let's have a listen to that interview. Welcome, Luke. It's been a while. How's it going?
Hey, Phil. Yeah, good. Good to be here. And congratulations on 15. You actually don't look 15.
No, unfortunately, I don't look 15. I don't know about you, but I find whenever I'm talking to my phone and I say 15, it says 50 by mistake. It's one of those words that. If we're following that logic, you were bang on there, or more or less. So thanks for coming on, Luke. A lot of your students here at the school will be very pleased to see you on the podcast after years, not months, right? It's been a little while.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of catching up to do, which is just as well, because the purpose of our chat today is to help us celebrate 15 years, but also to celebrate, your long career as well. We're talking to people just like you who've succeeded, right? Nothing left to prove. You've done it. And about what's changed. We can look back as DJs and then as a school as to what's changed in the last, let's just say 15 years. But I'd really like to talk then and now with you today. So let's start off with the now. You're recently signed to Dim Mak Records. You've got your new shows. How's that going? It seems to me from the outside like a pretty significant reinvention going on there, Luke.
Yeah, it has been. It felt like a turning point in my career, and just especially the moment where I realized how far away removed I was from my original artistic self, the one that started in the begin 2000. And it's funny because when I started, I was more in the alternative realm of the dance music spectrum, kind of like where a Sophie Tucker would sit in that sort of area. And I remember touring and only doing like rock venues and just like darker. It wasn't at all like sort of commercial leaning efforts or anything. And I had that realization last year where I was like, what happened? I was going through an old hard drive of mine and came across music from that era. And I got so invigorated by it, thinking, oh, I remember those times and that passion and where I was at artistically. I want to go back. And so I did. I kind of said to myself, screw the streams or chasing carrots and that sort of thing. Let's just do it how I used to. And it's been so I feel rejuvenated almost, because I'm really doing what I love, putting things out there that I love. And it's been so nice. What a journey. And I do want to add that although Digital DJ Tips is 15, I am about 30 in this career. So kind of like every 15 years might be a good celebration.
Yeah, I agree. From our corner, we spent 15 years doing it, and now we've spent 15 years teaching it. So we're kind of at the 30 as well.
Oh, there you go.
In that respect. But so we've. I mean, I remember your very first shows, Luke. I remember buying your first records. So we remember. We've got the same frame of reference, if you like, I would say, which is good because it's going to empower our conversation now, I think. I was talking to Ferry Corsten recently, who was talking about the kind of mini trance reinvention that's kind of been happening recently, and this kind of big push towards nostalgia and the way things used to be. And he was saying stuff which chimed with what you were saying then, which is just that the music has really stood up from back then. He was talking about the music he was making back then, and it's almost like everything was put in place back then. And everyone's been kind of reaping the rewards ever since. But it's almost as if, you know, they say with a child, right? If you show me a child at 7, I'll show you the man. It's almost like dance music hit 7 around then. And so everything that's come since has kind of followed a pattern that could have been predicted. And so when DJs like you and Ferry and all of us look back, it was kind of fully formed back then, wasn't it? Everything was there.
Yeah, it was. And the beauty is we had no clue what we were doing. We were just putting stuff out there and we were just having fun and inventing things instead of reinventing things, because a lot of these things weren't done or anything. But I guess the innocence of it is what made it so epic. And now we are fortunate enough to look back at that legacy and enjoy the benefits, like you said. Yeah, but it's wild because, you know, indeed, a lot of youth culture right now is grabbing back to that era. And whereas we were lucky enough to actually have lived in there and done it back then.
Indeed, yeah. And it was a fantastic time. I was talking to a DJ friend just today who was saying how much he thinks it's changed from then, as far as he said people don't dance anymore. They stand there and hold up their phones. And we had a chat about how everything seems to be fragmented now. Whereas back then it was tribes, wasn't it? You were a raver, or you were a househead, or you were an indie kid, or whatever. Everyone's got a bit of everything now. Does that chime with you? Do you see that?
Yes, I see that. I also see that, you know, every musical genre is possible right now and is accepted. Back then, you were either trance or no trance, or, you know, hardcore or hard house. But nowadays, everything goes, really. I think that's the strong.
Do
Yeah.
you think the kids, and I'm going to use that phrase without patronizing people, do you think the kids are still tribal somewhere along the way, but it's just not in music? I mean, I watch my kids. My son plays an awful lot of online gaming. Are they tribal about their, you know, their Minecraft server or something? You know,
No,
this is where we are. Do you see that? I mean, I'm just trying to
no.
figure out whether that even exists anymore. This kind of
I'm
belonging to a
shaking.
clan that was so important to us when we were young.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head because that's the biggest flaw, and I'm not saying this in a patronizing way. I'm saying this with all grace and compassion. The biggest flaw in this generation is that they are very alone and that they long for community, but there's no sense of community. And I think if we capitalize on that, and this that sounds horrible, but not capitalize, but like group people together, that's where we can connect with the younger generation right now. I think the biggest thing in life is a sense of community. And yeah, the new generation is lost and have no idea how it feels to be in a tribe and what you can form from that.
Yeah, it's food for thought, isn't it? And of course, music's always been the great uniter, so there's always that hope there. Let's move on. We got very philosophical very early, didn't we? But that's good. Let's move on and talk. Let's just get straight down to the thing we all need, which is DJ gear, right? So back in 2018, you said I spoke to you back then, and I've done my research. You said I don't see myself as a real DJ, and because you said, look, I started as a producer, so you were using production gear and stuff, and then you moved over to DJing. So from that producer to DJing thing, you then were one of the early adopters of the at the time forward-looking Den and DJ gear that had loads of stuff that the stuff everyone was using didn't. Now you're DJing with your phone. Well, you were last time I looked. Maybe you've changed again, and some very minimal gear. So you've always had this kind of this parallel thing going on with this love of technology and this love of gear, whether it was producing or whether it was the first new technology in DJing or whatever, pushing the boundaries alongside the music. And you know, you said I don't really see myself, at least primarily, as a DJ. I'm a bit aside from that. Talk about what it is about you that's always been like that. Why?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of unpacking here, and I'll happily do that because this is great. What a great question. Dance music and electronic dance music is based on technology. I tend to remind people of, you know, if it weren't for the flawed bass synth, that's a TB303, and a flawed drum computer, that's the Roland drum computer, and people just grabbing that and thinking, hey, yeah, this doesn't sound like a real drummer, but let's program some beats on there and let's, layer it with this crazy bass line sounds and tweak the knobs a little bit. This is how dance music started, implementing energy and always on the cutting edge of technology. And I just never lost that. I'm still forward looking within the technology, and if there's anything I find interesting, I've always found interesting, is technological advancement. And so I was actually, and I dare to say, in the Netherlands, I was the first DJ that stepped from vinyl to CDJs. This was back in 2003, and I remember doing a national interview on national TV, exclaiming that DJing with CDJs was going to be the future. Now, mind you, this was a landscape of all vinyl DJing, and it was an outrage, a national outrage of me saying that. People were like, this can never be true, and DJing with CDs isn't real DJing, and how can you say that? And I was like, well, you watch me. Lo and behold, I was actually the guy that did the rollout for the CDJ 2000 Nexus players, which are legendary now, obviously, of course. I also did the rollout of the RMX 1000 for Pioneer. So I was always there to push that kind of new development. And yeah, it's amazing to look back at those. And so when Denon came knocking, I was like, this is insane. They have a full touchscreen on their players. They have 8 hot cues and double layers. And it's like, man, this technology in there is insane. But then, I came across DJ Pro by Algorithm, and I think the first time I saw the stems in action must have been, well, right as they, rolled it out, and I was like, what is this magic? And I started implementing the use of my phone within the Denon structure. Did that for, a good year and a half, and I was like, there's more there. And so here we are. And it's funny, you say, oh, you're DJing off of your phone, which actually isn't true. The phone is the brain of my setup. I'm actually still DJing off of my controller, and the phone you can see as a USB or as a mini laptop, and it's just the brain of the system. The interesting part is, there might be a couple of Pioneer DJs watching this. My question is, if there's a CDJ 4000 coming next year, and we are in this age of AI, do you think the CDJ 4000s and their chips will be able to keep up with the advancement of AI? My answer would be no, because we're getting a phone or a laptop each and every year, and it gets upgraded. I would say, and this might be a hot take, for a hardware company to implement software right now, this will be very hard to keep up. And this is not an anti-Pioneer thing. This is just something to chew on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember seeing you at a show in Holland doing a talk about the advancements in DJ technology, and you were presenting from a CDJ DJ's point of view how much things have changed. And I remember at the time, and this was just a period, I'd say probably from about 2010 to 2015, when there were a lot of DJs who were not playing at your level, who were not playing gigs with what was now becoming traditional gear, right? It was now becoming accepted. Everyone was on CDJs, who had all these features that you weren't talking about because they weren't in that gear. You were showing off stuff which to the hobby DJ with their copy of Virtual DJ or whatever, we're like, oh, we've got that. We've had that for years. So you always had this kind of almost hobby, almost hackery kind of side of DJing, which wasn't really going on in the clubs, but had all this great technology, the software side. And then you had the hardware side, which was, as you've just outlined, lagging. What's happened recently, or at least what happened next, was the hardware, they kind of combined, right? So you got to a point where software was nearly there. Sorry, hardware was nearly there. But then things keep happening. Stems happen. Harmonic mixing happens. That's just starting to arrive now in hardware. But the big one, which you've just said is AI, of course, which has got the potential to completely change everything, and it's not going to be in hardware anytime soon. Hardware has got a built-in lag, hasn't it, because of that? But I guess the next question, and this is something that we talk about a lot with DJs who are actually performing like you, is how much do most DJs actually care? Because I'd say you're an outlier, Luke. Most DJs, in my experience and view, want to step up to something that they've always known with no changes. They know how it works. They know what's going to happen when they press buttons, and they're very scared to do anything or to adopt anything that might mess up their performance. So it's almost like they're too busy doing the DJing to think about how they're doing the DJing, and that's the way they're stuck like that. But you're not. But I'd say you're unusual. Would you say that's fair?
Well, it's interesting, Phil, because it sounds weird to me. Where it's like, if you hire an architect or if you go and see sports, you expect a performance, right? If you go and see someone do sports at high level, you expect an athlete, right? Just because DJing is being able to be hacked doesn't mean there's anything good coming out of it. I know it's a hot take, but and I want to lean into the digital DJ tips community here as well, because I know these are passionate people that want to learn all the ins and outs of DJing. And I wish that a lot of bigger producers would do the same. And it's funny, sometimes I talk to producers and they're like, oh, I just mastered the basics of DJing and now I'm on these big stages. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. How long have you been practicing DJing? Oh, maybe a year or so. And I was like, well, if you spend 1 year learning how to produce, how do your tracks sound? Oh, yeah, well, I could barely program a beat. And I'm like, this is how your DJing sounds. And I love coming at them like that because, I'm just fed up with being hacked. I'm fed up with prefab mashups. I'm fed up with people only being able to play an hour because this is the whole set they prepared. There's a discussion. This could be an artistic performance versus DJing, and that's fair. But I love the DJing part. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, I did something for SoundCloud inside of the office, and it was a DJ set. And me being me, I came in fully unprepared, which I love because I carry like 3,500 tracks, and I'll just pop up on the moment, see what the crowd needs. And I stood there DJing, and my set was completely different than I had imagined because of me adapting to the crowd and giving them a really great time on the moment. And I just couldn't imagine me mapping out the whole set, coming to that place, feeling the vibe, the temperature of the room, seeing the people that I didn't reckon were going to be there. And it's like, if I had prepped this whole thing, it would have been so flawed. Yet I flipped it around on the moment and we all had fun. And I wish more people would understand this. This is actually the sensation of DJing, where on the fly and on the moment you give them what is needed. And to nail that, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
And actually that feeling transcends the technology. I think this is where we can square this, because it doesn't matter what you're using if your attitude to DJing is that it's something that can be learned and can be bettered and you can reach a high stage in it, and it's not just pressing play on stuff.
Well, interestingly enough, Phil, I'm sorry to interrupt you, because this is great as well. a lot of the original the vinyl purists thinking only DJing with vinyl is much better than using all technology. What do you essentially do when you DJ on vinyl? You hit play and the track goes. There's no loops, there's no cues, and essentially you're just waiting around until the moment hits, until you mix. And it's funny in that sense, disregarding the beat matching on vinyl, DJing with vinyl is really easy, really straightforward. So in its essence, what is DJing about? DJing is about playing the right track at the right time. And you can do that on anything.
People in front of you right now.
Yeah.
Back to your SoundCloud story. You don't know until you get there who they are. But no, the story I was going to relate was funnily enough, I was chatting to Mojax about vinyl DJing. He, like me, is a bit of a closet, but not so much of a closet, 7-inch DJ. We like to mess around with 7 inches and just get back to basics. But he was saying what you were saying. He's saying, I will have a think about what I want to take. I'll pack my 150 songs, because of course that's all you can take. But hey, you can take a lot more than you could with 12 inches. And I'll sort them out when I'm there. I'll put the first one on, then I'll look through from beginning to end, and they'll start to filter towards the front, the ones, and there's never any planning, because to me, his words, to me, that's the joy of it. The joy of it is that spontaneity. And so that to my point, that it doesn't matter what gear you're using, it's your attitude towards what you're doing that is probably more important than the technology, right?
Well, and I have a concrete lesson here for the viewers for your platform as well, Phil, is that, okay, so you have this select group of tracks you brought, but the way you play them and in which order you play them is pivotal, because it could be all of the wrong tracks that you shouldn't play, but if you play them in a certain order, then sometimes it could work, and you massage people into that. And there's a lesson there, and that's something I execute as well. I sometimes sit down my own students where I'm like, okay, I played these 7 tracks in my classics section last night. If I would play them X, Y, and Z, it wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have gotten an amazing reaction, because it would just, be on the nose and then too cheesy and this and that. But if you weasel your way through that, then something magical happens. And I do think that's a very underestimated power of DJing as well.
The power of programming. I mean, I spoke to a mentor of mine many years ago, like decades ago, who said to me, I'll have a tune I really want to play, and I might spend half the night getting to the point where I can play it. And it's almost like planning a route to get to where you want to be. And that's the only moment in the night that really matters to you, because you want to play that tune, right? You really want to play that tune. But if you get it wrong, it's all going to go wrong. And so it's good to hear you, fire that back all these years later. Speaking of mentoring, you were just talking about your students. Obviously, you're a tutor here. We've got lots of students on your courses here at the school. But you've had a pretty long list of household names who you've worked with and mentored over the years. Avicii, Afrojack, I believe. Oliver Heldens, I believe. Steve Angelo you work with. And I guess there was the old mentoring thing going on there as well. And I could carry on, I'm sure. I wanted to ask you how the things that you get asked by your students have changed over the years. Are they asking different questions now to 15, 20, 30 years ago to you?
No, not really, but they should, because the landscape has changed so much. This is a hot take, and especially, amongst the people that are interested in producing, I actually recommend people to not learn how to produce nowadays. With the coming of the age of AI, you won't need to be able to produce anymore. And it's crazy. I know that, and I hate saying this, but unfortunately, that's going to be the reality. Now, granted, just like you can still DJ on 7 inches, real producing and the craft of real producing will always be there. But is it needed? And in the very near future, I don't think so. So a lot of the questions are like, back in the day would be like, oh, how do I compress this kick, and not even as much on DJing itself or DJ tricks or anything, which I'll happily flip it around and I'll tell them, all of these kind of like old school wisdom we have in regards to DJing. But nowadays I'm like, get your socials right, and focus on showing up there every day. You need to realize that social media is your ticket out in the world and that sort of thing. And it's a wild time we live in right now, where it's not as much about, oh, I am this guy who has this incredible talent and you should book me. No, it's like, how much do you show up on the feed, and therefore people know you, and therefore they'll book you. And even if you might play a crappy set afterwards, it's like, oh yeah, but they're famous. And it's just a reality that we're living in right now.
I mean, this is something that speaks to the broad church that is DJing in 2025, to be sharing our point of view on this, because of course, if you want to succeed, then yes, what you just outlined is the reality of today. But you don't have to want to succeed to really, really enjoy the culture and the joy of DJing. You can do it for yourself, and in which case, of course, the questions that you ask and the things you want to learn are going to be very different, right? Because there's no need for all that. You can concentrate on the skills. I do want to completely agree with you about AI. I don't think people realize it. I mean, I was blown away. Regularly, this happens, but this whole idea of, I don't know if you've heard the exact phrase, of vibe coding, where you literally write software on vibes, on, hey, I want it to do this and I want it to do that. And you can literally tell AI and it will spit out a web app that you can run with no coding experience at all. And then you can put a link underneath your YouTube video. You could say, I'm going to show you in this video something, and you could, in half a day, code something that someone clicks on and they have this experience that you wrote without knowing a thing about coding. I mean, and then of course that's getting people onto your lists, it's getting people to your socials or whatever. But you're right, these are questions that people aren't asking, and maybe they should, really. I want to talk to you about something else that we do talk about now that we haven't in years gone by, and obviously something that is healthy to be talking about, which is mental health. You've spoken a lot about mental health in the industry, and it's something you see happening now that it's just become normal, right? It's become normal for DJs and for the places we gather and the conferences we go to and so on, for mental health. In the old days, it was like kind of, how long can you stay up without sleep, and look at this, lifestyle I'm living and stuff. And it was a conversation that was very late but had to happen, right?
Yeah, too late. And it spawned from the passing of Avicii, where in the DJ community, and especially in the groups of our top level DJ community, we really started talking about that. And it's funny, Phil, because you mentioned it just now, the joy of DJing, which I love, which can be anywhere, right? And one would think, looking from the outside, that the most joy in DJing you would have at the biggest festivals, doing busy summer tours and that sort of thing. But man, it's like eating sushi 365 days a year. By day 360 or even sooner, you're fed up with sushi. And so there's the joy of DJing gone. So indeed, I think that is really important to focus on, where it's like, are you really still enjoying that? And it's not about the carrot. It's about being in the moment and matching these tracks and, having fun. And indeed, the mental health conversation keeps on going. I do think we're in an era right now where I'm talking to my millennials here, where millennials still think, grinding and working hard 7 days a week, and, that's the life. But if you're grinding that much, are you still living?
It's the Gary Vaynerchuk kind of approach to hustle, isn't it? Everything's got to be a hustle. You're not allowed to have hobbies. You're not allowed to do things for the joy of it. There has to be an outcome. And it's something that's been lost, I think.
So it's important to talk about that.
It's a peculiarly British thing to be an old eccentric who just loves whatever, pruning pot plants or whittling or whatever it is you get up to. But it's gone as well. It's gone. It's kind of been obliterated by this hustle culture that you mentioned. But to be fair, Luke, you were talking about this right back when we started at the EDM boom. I remember you talking about burnout, like we're talking 15 years ago. Yeah. You toured ever since, right? So how has touring culture changed? How's what's expected of you, the whole lifestyle thing of being on tour? How has that changed over the last couple of decades?
Well, for me, COVID really helped with that. Where before COVID, I was kind of complaining about touring like I would be complaining about eating sushi every day. But then, during COVID, there were no shows, there were no gigs, there was no crowd. And I was like, I really miss this right now. A lot of my fellow DJs said, I don't miss this at all, and I love being home. And for me personally, I was like, I miss this. I want this. And what stood out most for me wasn't the actual task of DJing or being able to manipulate a crowd or whatever. It was actually meeting people all around the world and just having snippets of helping people, for instance, and just connecting with people. Talking about the age of AI, I think now is most important for us to come together as a community, gather tribes, gather communities, and to me this ties into touring as well, where I'm like, I just go out and I travel to a city, and I'll take in what I can, and I like meeting people, talking to people, hearing about their journey and how my journey collides with theirs. And I think I'm operating on such a more detailed level now, where it's not about the big thing; it's about the smaller things that complete the full experience.
It's almost like the big things are predictable, but the smaller things are still hold your interest.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's talk about one of the big things, the crowd, right? So I remember, you remember the early 90s. So that's 30 years of watching crowds, of DJing to crowds. What's changed about audiences in that 30 years?
This might be very controversial, Phil, but I do want to throw it out there. I think a lot of things have to do, mind you, I'm not one of those, but the drug use and what kind of drugs people use. You know, if we're being honest, in the late 90s and the early stages of dance music, there were people, on drugs. And I think nowadays, with people using a lot of ketamine, for instance, which is a whole different drug, less euphoric and stuff, it changes the dance culture. Now, I want to emphasize again, I've never done any drugs in my life, so this is just by viewing people. But I think that gives us a big contrast of how partying was back then on euphoric stuff versus how partying is now on horse tranquilizer,
Yes.
and it's a completely different experience, and shout out to all my people going out there and just being on alcohol and dancing to the power of music, which is great. um, but it just shows a different type of era, and obviously we could point towards the phone use and social media and that sort of thing. um, but there's many other things involved. Also, the sense of people not being able to connect within a tribe while they're standing in the tribe is also another thing. So there's many factors to that. um, it's so funny because I remember in 1997 I was going to go to a festival with some of my friends, and I was like, okay, at noon let's meet at this and that stand, and then we'll gather and we'll party, right? And lo and behold, they weren't there at noon, and there weren't mobile phones yet. And so at the end of the night, I came across them and we're like, "How was your day?" "Yeah, your day was great." And it's kind of like nowadays everything is so in between those types of like missing your friends and making the best of the party. There are all of these detailed little incidents where you just made the best of it. And
Yes.
nowadays you can plan everything out, and so everything on every aspect is so different from back then.
There's a control aspect now that just wasn't there, isn't it? I mean, I remember exactly what you said. I remember turning up at, it was usually a big event, it'd be a festival or something. You'll turn up with your mates, you'll lose them and you'll bump into them again 8 hours later and you've got stories to tell. Whereas that just can't happen. It literally can't happen now because everyone's tracking everyone else. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's, funnily enough, I was thinking of switching phone brand. And one of the things I thought, am I going to be able to get on without, being able to find my kids immediately because I might have to forfeit that and all this kind of thing. But like the whole idea of tracking your children, it's quite menacing, really, in a way, isn't it? And yet it's all become completely normal. It's all become like, hey, we're a family. We know where each other is, and it's just. I often think, is it us getting old? Were things always changing this quickly? And it's just that we rolled with it easier when we were younger. But I actually don't. I think that there is an acceleration going on now that wasn't happening before. And we're all living through it, young and old, this acceleration. Do you feel that as well, that things are just speeding up?
100%. And furthermore, it's not going to stop either. So either you adapt or you fall behind. Now, I want to preface with all of this, and also with me DJing on the gear that I'm DJing now. DJing the old way, with vinyls, with 7 inches, with CDJ 1000s, is always going to be there. which is great. So you can always grab back. You can always go to a festival, shut off your phone and say, screw to everyone whose location I'm sharing with, and let's go, you know. I would love to tell the new generation, hey, maybe you should try some ecstasy instead of
Go full
ketamine.
circle.
See how that goes, you know. Um, but the old ways are always going to be there. So I think that's very comforting. And you can
Mm.
choose to go within that funnel, and the funnel will be there. But yeah, we can do it always the old way. So it's fascinating.
So, talking about the old way, you were famous, I would say, within our circles back in the day for teaching. You've always, you might have said to me years ago, I don't see myself as a DJ, but I think you've always seen yourself as a teacher. Now, back in the day, it was all about forums, right? It was all about message boards and so on. And now you've made two structured DJ courses with us, which the whole idea of that would have been crazy back then. So, how have you seen teaching changing in the last 20 years or so?
Well, obviously, people can scour around the internet and gather the lessons they want and everything. But I think the beauty of what I did with you is that it's an actual curriculum. And I couldn't have done that by myself, because you guys have outlined that so perfectly and smartly. And I actually come across a lot of people that took my digital DJ tips courses and that are really thankful for it. And I see it with myself as well. You know, I'm doing jujitsu now for the last 6 months, and I'm just online scouring all the videos that I can see. But then I walk into the school and see my teacher teaching it in front of me, and I'm like, this is so different than YouTube, but so great. And it's
It's
that
fun.
type of experience that we can give within digital DJ tips as well, where it's just so detailed and so outlined, way more effective than the short YouTube clips you might find.
It's funny you should say that because we as a good school, we like to have teachers ourselves. We like to be taught. And one of the things taking some training with someone recently who was talking about the importance of social media and using YouTube and Instagram to share short form video and stuff and the fragmentation. People take a bit of this and a bit of this and a bit of this, and this is how people assimilate information nowadays. And almost in the same breath, he said, when I want to find out something, I go and find one person who knows everything I need to know and I stick with them. it's like you've just pointed out this dichotomy nowadays, which is this information is all around us. And if you're just dabbling, it's great. But the second you're definite about this is what I want, you're going to learn quicker and you're going to have a more fulfilling experience if you can find that one person who you know is going to be able to deliver for you. And it's going to be different for different people, right? And so I'm glad you said that, the combination of us bringing the curriculum and you bringing the skills work, because that's our experience as well. We can kind of channel your experience to make you the one person that can help as many people as possible, which is the outcome we were aiming for. And I can tell you, you say I've met lots of people who've taken my courses. An awful lot of people still getting a lot of value because the fundamentals don't change. You might be teaching on Den and DJ gear when we filmed you, but the stuff you taught was transferable then and it's transferable now. Which brings me on to, what are the fundamentals? What has stayed the same in DJing for the last 20, 30 years and will stay the same for the next 20 or 30? What are the fundamentals that are timeless in your view?
Well, interestingly enough, I noticed this in my martial arts as well and in my producing, where I've been doing Kung Fu for over 25 years now, and I'm a Kung Fu teacher as well. And it's like you always get back to the basics, back to the fundamentals. And you learn them early in your early stages, and you kind of want to glance over them because you want to get to the spectacular parts, right? Without realizing that the spectacular parts are based on those fundamentals, and that at a certain point at a high level, you will get back to the fundamentals. So yeah, I can't emphasize enough how essential those are. And indeed, again, if you want to go to the fundamentals of DJing, I feel the essence is playing the right track at the right time. There's something to say for beat matching. Now, if you're a vinyl DJ, if you're interested in that, then by all means, learn how to beat match, and then learn how to beat match just using the pitch fader if you want to be, excellent about it, which is something I teach in my course as well,
Yes.
how to do that. But then, fast forward 2025, where we have sync, and it's not essential to beat match anymore because there's a button for it now. Or if you're on CDJs, you can just read the BPM on the screen and slide your pitch fader there. And, so there's something to say for that. Beat matching was often regarded as one of the essentials. And nowadays it's not really that much of a thing anymore. But playing the right track at the right time, knowing the energy that music brings for me and my dance floors is super important. I was teaching my son the other day. Because he's diving into DJing much, and he's 22 right now, but he never asks me any questions. And I'm like, okay, so what are you looking at when you're DJing? And he's like, well, first I'll look up the tracks in the same key. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. And this is a really big misconception, I think, is in DJing right now. So I said to him, do you mean to say that if you are playing a tropical house track in the key of F, because I'm a producer, I still use musical keys, in the key of F, and you play a drum and bass track after in the key of F, you think that's a good combination? What does that do for the dance floor energy? And he's like, oh, no, that's not a good combination. And I'm like, that's why you need to prioritize energy and genre. Genre maybe first, and then energy within that genre. And it's something I teach as well. So those type of fundamentals as well, because what do you think it's going to do for a dance floor? Oh, but they stopped dancing while I was playing this drum and bass track in F, and I went into this deep house track in F. The keys were right. I don't understand why they stopped dancing. Dance floor energy, the way you go about in your set, which is a myth that we should talk about more often, which is telling the story as a DJ. What is that? Reading a crowd, that sort of thing. Those type of fundamentals will always be essential. This one as well, and this one is often forgotten. DJs should be tastemakers. You should be that DJ that overwhelms a crowd with a track no one knows, but everyone's blown away by it, and everyone wants to know what that track is. Taste making, that sort of thing.
They're hard to find nowadays, of course. And also, I think this is something AI will never be able to do for DJs, because AI is by its nature reductive. It does what's been done before. I always remember back in the day when someone thought it was a great idea to drop Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana in the middle of a house set. Within 6 weeks, everyone was doing it. But, to think I can get away with that, which was the correct decision for whoever did it first, changed dance music. It made it okay to bring guitars back at a time when it was all electronic. And it's instinct, isn't it? The DJ's instinct so it doesn't have to be new music you're taste making with. It could just be, we need this and we need this now. And I'm going to play it. And I'm going to clear the dance floor if it clears it. And if it does, then who cares? There's something else 2 minutes away, but I'm doing it. It's that spirit. I dropped the needle onto Gary Newman's Cars, which I haven't heard in about 20 years the other day. And oh my God, what a synthesizer he was playing. And I just had that feeling that I know you know the same feeling. It was a tingling going all the way down your back to your bum saying, I would love to drop this track at the right time in front of a crowd. That's DJing, isn't it? That's the fundamental. It doesn't matter what, it's the energy that you feel for the music that you can't keep inside. You undo the car window and turn the music up if you're in a traffic jam because that tune needs to be heard by someone else. It's DJing as a kid with your bedroom door open so your mum can hear it. That's part of it, isn't it? It's that passion.
Yeah, 100%. I still remember one of my greatest times in mixing, and it had nothing to do with technique or anything, where it was like I ended my set with like 135 straight techno banging ending, and everyone was tired almost, because they gave it their all. We had some great build-ups and drops, and it was the end of the night. It was a long set, and something in my brain said, you got to play Bob Marley, Could There Be Love? Could You Be Loved?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not too sure about this. Sounds like fun. And, lo and behold, I did that, and the place reunited. People were hugging each other and all sweaty. It was the perfect ending. And it's like moments like those you can't predict. Can you imagine me being home and predicting it, fabricating my full set, and then, oh, what if? No, it doesn't work that way.
It's fantastic, isn't it? It's there's something, again, funnily enough, I was just talking to someone this morning about this. There's something that DJs learn about dropping the tempo to unite a room that is counterintuitive. It's kind of, if I want energy, I want everyone together, I've got to get harder and faster, but it's not always the case, as you just outlined. So let's end off with one piece of advice from you, Luke, to someone starting their DJ journey, whether it's your son at 22, whether it's, well, it wouldn't be my son because he's a gamer, but my daughter played her first DJ set. She's 12. She actually played it when she was 10. I taught her what she needed, and she played for 3 hours. Can you believe that, in front of her schoolmates? But if you were giving advice to a preteen, a teenager, or someone just starting out now of any age, what would be your one piece of advice in 2025? And let's give it this then and now twist. How is that different from the advice you would have given them back in the beginning?
There's no difference. I think the one thing that stands out for me in this conversation, Phil, is the joy of DJing. Always find it. Always be curious about it. What that exactly entails, because it might just be, you prepped an hour set and then mid-set you're like, screw it, I'm just going to freestyle. That could be the joy of DJing. Or you're DJing and you're playing tracks that will not even fit in the set, but you're playing it, and the joy you get from it is incredible. And I think even for someone like me, I still need to find the joy of DJing, where I'm like, I'm eating sushi 360 days a year. Where is my joy of DJing? Well, I might just have a burger tonight, then I'll play a hip hop set or, something outlandish. And I think that in its essence is a timeless message where even AI can't take over. Where it's like, I think, if we gather in 15 years again, we are still looking for the joy of DJing, and it'll bring us so much power and joy.
Well, thank you very much, Luke. And let's make that date for 15 years' time and see where we are then.
Will do.
Pleasure to have
Thank
you
you
on.
very much. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoy talking to Luke. We've spent a lot of quality time with him over the years, filming the DJ courses that we sell, where he teaches bootlegs and mashups and re-edits and how to DJ and all those things that we talked about here in this podcast. And we do tend to philosophize a little bit when we get together. I hope that was to your taste, and I hope you enjoyed the interview and got some insights from it. Just to remind you that Digital DJ Tips is fully funded by our fantastic students, which means that everything you hear on this channel has no ulterior motive. There are no sponsorships, no affiliate deals, nothing going on behind the scenes. Our whole aim is to push DJ culture forward. So if you enjoyed this and you'd like to learn how to DJ from us or from Luke or from any of our other tutors, do take a look at what we do over at digitaldjtips.com. We have courses, programs, and I'm sure there'll be something for you there. And even if you don't, please give us a 5-star review or rating. It really does help us to spread the word about what we do here. So that's it for this time. I hope you'll join me on another podcast very soon. But meanwhile, from me, Phil, here in the Digital DJ Tips School Studio, get good, get out there, and make the moments. Bye for now.